Welcome to the podcast of Terrace Consulting.
Hello and welcome to a new episode 100 of this series of interviews with leaders of the hospitality industry. I have the pleasure today of having with me Stephanie Coradin, who is a trainer, consultant, mentor, anything related with HR, with mental health, which is so important now after this very long period of hardship during the pandemic. She's specialized in mentoring and coaching, training team members of the hospitality industry to make sure everyone gives their best and can be the best version of themselves. So, Stephanie, how are things?
I'm well. Thanks for having me, Pablo.
My pleasure. As I was saying in the introduction, episode 100 of this series, and I think it's the first time that I touched this topic that you're going to be talking about mental health, which has been discussed widely, especially during the pandemic. It's been very hard for people in the industry. But before we go there, I always ask my guests on the show to talk about their past professionally. So how your background from Hard Rock Hotels to the current role as CEO of Dembo, please.
Sure. Thank you so much again for having me, and congratulations on the 100th episode. As far as my background, I've been in hospitality since I was 18 years old. I started as a server, I moved up to a bartender. Then I moved into hotels and worked everything from, front desk, did cross training and housekeeping, and all the way up to training and development director. And that's when I realized that I had a special mix because during my time at Hard Rock, I did go and get my mental health degree. I did do the residency in a mental eating disorder facility. And I quickly realized that it wasn't what I wanted to do directly. Hospitality was like in my blood. So I went back into hospitality, and I was able to use that mix of mental health knowledge and my business operations knowledge in hotels to craft trainings and coachings for team members and leaders that was really effective, that helped them grow and promoted empowerment and, ownership in their positions. So that's how I started. And then I moved on to to go on my own with Dembo Inc. I created Dembo Inc. to bridge that gap for more hotels than just one, because I felt like I could help way more, hospitality industry team members if I was out doing consulting work on my own.
Okay, and that was in 2017. Thanks for giving the information. And how would you describe Dembo then?
So Dembo Inc. is an agency where we do professional and personal development training. We work with leaders, supervisors and above to help them harness their own leadership so that they can create leadership skills with their members. One of the things that I always see with hotels specifically is that sometimes it's a cookie cutter leadership where people come from other industries and just throw it into hospitality. And the thing is, because our business is so nuanced, we deal with people on a different level. It's hard to have a cookie cutter training for leadership. So Dembo Inc. works specifically with hospitality leaders to harness that certain emotional leadership and bring more inside of you out to deal with team members and internal and external guests.
So focus on leadership development, and you mentor, you train people, you do consulting. Yes. So on a daily basis, what does it mean working on Dembo?
So on a daily basis, it mostly means doing workshops on leadership, conflict resolution, equity and inclusion, just basically teaching people who are already in leadership how to lead from a mental health wellness point of view. So my day-to-day looks like either a workshop or coaching one-on-one or coaching small groups or sitting with a director of HR, crafting a strategy for company culture.
Okay, which is another topic there, company culture, and not only individual leadership, but also
yes.
Okay. As I was saying in the introduction, the pandemic has been very hard, especially with our industry, hospitality. There's a lot of been discussed about that, mental health, and which I'll ask you now. But before that, what about the roles in themselves? Have you seen a change and development in the roles, and how is that affecting the individuals?
Sure. So a lot of times we hear that we've been hearing about labor shortage a lot in the hospitality industry. And I'm not big on believing in leader labor shortage in itself, because hospitality has always had an issue with labor. We've thrown people into roles without training. We've promoted people and not set them up for that promotion. So we've always had that revolving door. A lot of positions in hospitality are entry level, so people tend to get their foot in the door and then move up. So those positions stay open. So this is not a pandemic issue, it's an ongoing issue. However, during the pandemic, it's more widespread and there's more people going through this issue. There are people that are sick with COVID. The hotels had closed for a long time and people freaked out and tried to go into different industries just because they feared that if something like this ever happens again, they might get laid off again. So they tried to go back into, some people went to school, some people went into just different industries. So now that we're trying to get our feet back on the ground, the roles have changed to where a lot of hotels are having to offer more money. We're trying to train people better, which is an excellent thing. So that's the silver lining of COVID. We're realizing that people need more training. And then my personal favorite is that we are realizing that we cannot throw people into lead positions without proper training. Some people can be a rock star front desk agent or a rock star guest services person, but they're not a leader yet. So they need that training. And we're now finally realizing that we have to be more involved. Oh, how should I say this? Like, I'm not saying just training, but just more stability in a role so that people have a path, an action plan to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that will be at an individual level or as a company level. So, in other words, what is it that your clients are needing the most from you? That individual path and learning, or is it the company is asking you to, as a company, you were saying,
Yeah, it's a company level. It's on a company level because the individuals, they don't know what they don't know. They don't know that they need a training that they have no clue about. So it's the company that has to see the broader part of it and then bring it back and trickle it down to their team members. So I usually, the way training usually works on my point of view is like a train the trainer part thing. So I train the leaders and then the leaders can go back and train their team members.
So a lot's been said about the labor shortage. You're questioning that. You're saying that is not only because of the pandemic. The pandemic has just triggered that, make it expose the problem. So one of the options is pay people more money to try to retain the talent, but that shouldn't be the only way to fix that. So how can the industry attract or keep the talent?
So there again, and I hate to keep going back to training, but a lot of it goes back to if you're throwing people into a role and they don't know what to expect, it's going to be a revolving door, because once they're in that role, they're like, oh, this is not what I was looking for, or oh, this is too hard. But if they're trained, if they know what they're getting into, it's a different thing. Like you have to love hospitality. You know this. You have to love it to be in it, right? So it requires a certain amount of hand holding at first in order for the person to know what they're getting into. So I would say training is a big part of it. It's a grueling, especially for frontline team members, it could be a grueling industry. So giving them more flexibility in their hours and the way they work is also important. Giving them empowering your team members. Have you ever been to a hotel where the person is like, oh, the only discount I can give you is $25. I can't do anything more. And then the room is like maybe $500 a night. And so that's a little how should I call it? It's demoralizing to the team members when they don't have ownership of their own job. Like they're the ones that are here, they're the ones that are in front of the guests, but they can't do anything really for the guests. So I would say empower them, give them the tools, let them do their job, let them use their common sense, let them use the knowledge that you provide for them to do the work well. It's not always about the money. It's mostly about their integrity and pride, right? So if you give them the proper tools to do the job, the proper training to do the job, you give them some flexibility in their hours to where they don't feel like if they have to not come into work because their kid is sick, they're going to get fired, then you'll gain their loyalty. So those are all the things that I think will help keep team members.
Mm-hmm. And now you mentioned it. I mean, thinking about the different companies I've worked with, it's true, there are very few that they really empower the front line, in this case, staff to do discounts or to negotiate, or if there is any complaint, for example, to, yeah.
And those front lines are mostly what, first of all, is needed the most. Like you need cooks, you need chefs, you need front desk agents, you need housekeepers. Those are the positions that you need the most in a hotel. They're the front lines. They're the ones that at most of the places get paid less, but they're also the ones that are not empowered to make a decision. So.
And now the digitalization of the industry is coming and some roles are disappearing. I mean, it happened in the past, obviously, but now it seems more obvious, especially with the self-check-in. You have your key in your mobile, so there is less need for reception. So you've seen it in hotels. How is that affected then the morale or the motivation of the teams?
So it frightens them. It a lot, especially during COVID. I've spoken to team members that say, yes, I have a job now, but I don't know how long I'm going to have a job for. And that's one of the things that I always tell leaders to try to remind or assure your team members that you're not about to let them go just because there's a kiosk for somebody to check in. I personally believe that even if there are self-check-ins, getting rid of front desk agents altogether is not going to be sustainable in the hospitality industry, just because it's a people industry. You know, people want to deal with people when they go to a hotel. They don't want to have to deal with a machine. So, but what I teach my leaders is that tell your people this. Be open and frank with them that, yes, we're going to have these systems to help you, but we're not going to ever be able to just get rid of everybody. I don't know for 50, 60 years down the road, but for right now, we're going to need people to run these desks. So it is very hard on the team members that are seeing the progress that is being made. It's kind of like when you go to a grocery store, like a Walmart or something, you see all these self-checkouts. I'm sure the team members are frightened in the same way.
Yeah, it's very similar. The check out of the shop, check out in a hotel. You can do yourself. Less cashiers in that case. One of the thinking of the mental well-being, mental health of the staff. One point is being frightened of losing their job. What are the main reasons, or I wouldn't say reasons, but the main concerns that they share with you?
So a lot of concerns that I get is, again, with the empowerment part. Besides the losing their job, they feel like they can't do anything. So for lack of a better word, I've heard team members say, like, I look like a fool in front of this guest because I can't do anything for them. Like any little thing, I have to call a supervisor or get a manager. So that's one of the things that we try to push on them. Empower your team members, give them the tools. Another thing that we always hear is the hours that they have to work. Like sometimes you'll have team members leaving the hotel at 6 at midnight, and they have like a 7 a.m. shift to turn back around and come to, especially now with the shortage of people. And that is a big one where they fear burnout, they fear getting sick, they fear, not having the family time. And that's one of the reasons why I put flexibility in my list of things that will help, or at least, a daycare or something where they can have a little bit more time with their family, with their kids specifically.
Would it be also that the younger generations are more, I don't know if demanding is the word, but before people will take kind of everything, and now there was like, well, I need more flexibility, I need to be able to decide. Are you seeing that in the younger people?
Oh yes. Oh yes. So in the multi-generational companies that we're working in now, because we have several generations working together, we see this a lot where, older people are like, and the older people are usually the executives because they've been there longer, they have more experience, and they're like, suck it up. I had to do this, why can't you? And then you have the younger crowd where they're in their 20s and they're like, no, I need work-life balance. I need to be able to, leave work and still be able to go hang out with friends and so on and so forth. And it's finding that middle ground. It's finding a compromise between the two. And that part can be a bit tricky, but it is still doable. And that's why I always say flexibility in hours. I'm not necessarily saying that you're going to go one way or the other completely, but that middle ground is necessary for everybody to work together.
Okay, compromise,
Yeah.
challenging.
Yeah.
One last question I have here for you. I usually ask the same question at the end of every interview, and it's about how can we try to motivate, to entice young people to go into the industry? Because as we've seen, less and less people want to get into our industry. There is less people studying hospitality or hotel management. So what can we tell them to make it attractive to them?
Oh my goodness. I was having this conversation with a colleague of mine a few weeks ago, and we actually went to FIU, Florida International University, to discuss this. And one of the things that we've decided is, again, the younger crowd likes to have their how do I call it, freedom. So it's finding ways to show them that this is still a cool and hip industry. Like, yeah, you have to work 12 hours, but guess what? If you work those hours, you can get into these clubs with more exclusivity than other people would be able to. We get these types of contacts that we get that other industries don't get because we're in the industry. So it's finding things that the young crowd is interested in and showing them how they can have a rewarding career and still be able to enjoy their life.
Which tends to be more the focus for them, about like this
Exactly.
enjoy life. It's not that much about
Exactly.
living to work, but working to live.
Working to live.
Mhm.
Yep.
100% agree with you. Okay, so it can be still cool and hip, and it can be a rewarding career. Okay,
Yes. I love it.
Perfect. I was taking notes while you were giving the answers. Okay, Stephanie, Coradin, again, thank you. Thanks very much for your time. It's been a
Thanks for
pleasure
having
giving
me,
some
Pablo.
light about the mental health of the
Yes,
hospitality
definitely.
staff from Dembo in the Miami, Florida area.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was all for now. Hope you found it useful. Remember that you have more information on our website www.torresconsulting.co.uk, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and Twitter. Stay well. Goodbye for now.